And we're live. First ever episode of Workspace After Work podcast with our first guest, of course, none other than Rowan Manson. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Troy. I feel like it's an honor to be the first.
Yeah, of course. Had to have Rowan on as the first guest for this my first episode, my new podcast focused on Google Workspace. For those who don't know our history, Rowan, and those of you who are listening, Rowan and I used to work together. We're former colleagues, and we were former co-hosts of another show at our former employer, who Rowan still works for, called SADA Systems, Google Cloud partner. Great place to work. I was there for almost 3 years, and now I'm at another Google Cloud partner called Strata Prime. But yeah, had to have you on as the first guest, Rowan. I think, we have lots to talk about, and Rowan and I are friends outside of work as well. We both live in Toronto and get to hang out. So when I started talking about my next project, he was the first person on the list, of course.
Of course, how could I not be? And of course, sad to see you go at SADA, but I think delighted that through us meeting, it really ignited your passion for a new line of work, or really focusing on the workspace or productivity side of things that we do.
Yeah.
So really delighted for that. I think we talked about it the other day, and we were celebrating that together, which I think is fantastic. And of course, we remain close friends. There wouldn't be any other version of that possible. So, yeah.
Yeah, of course, man. We'll get into that, a little bit of the backstory about, how we started a project called 27 Degrees that was turned from an originally was supposed to be really similar to this project, a podcast based around Google Workspace that we came up with after Rowan. I went on another podcast called the Workspace Update. What did Jesse and Steve call their podcast, Rowan, that you went on?
Workspace Update Show? I'm not sure.
They're gonna absolutely chastise us in the comments, I'm sure, for this. Jesse and Steve, put the proper title of your podcast in the comments, please. I know you'll be listening into this first episode. That's of course Jesse Nolan and Steve Larson, colleagues and peers in the Google Workspace industry, admins of Google Workspace, and Steve actually works alongside a new colleague of mine named Brian Kim. So shout out to Brian. They do a lot of great work for Workspace admins, covering recent updates and bug fixes and that sort of thing. But yeah, we can easily digress into that. But I think there's first priority here is it's been long awaited for you and I to do this on a show together. Let's crack a beer, my friend. This is my podcast now. It's my own project. We can easily have an adult beverage and relax on a Friday evening after a long week of work. Yeah.
Totally. Life in the clouds.
Yeah, of
course. An absolute classic.
Yeah, that's from Collective Arts. It's a local brewery here in Ontario, based in Hamilton with a location in Toronto as well. Cheers, my friend.
Well, cheers. Delicious.
So if we go back to, I guess, when was it? January 2021, we would have first met. Met Rowan through work, obviously, joined the team and was joining our Team Canada calls. At that time, I was account manager for Canadian accounts at SADA, and I had a little interest in this new Scottish guy that had shown up on the scene, and was asking what he was all about, and of course got immediately inundated with the workspace passion that just oozes out of you at all times. And that's an inspiring thing to be around. And over the course of the next few months, you convinced me to start looking into Workspace a little bit more. And at the time, I was focused on GCP quite a bit, being in the Google Cloud ecosystem. That's a hot product to look at, but started looking into Google Workspace more, and then heard his guest appearance on Jesse and Steve's podcast and thought, man, I could host this guy. He sounds like he knows what he's talking about. This could be a thing that we get going here.
Yeah, that's right. And then it all kind of snowballed from there. We started hanging out a lot more in Toronto. I was sharing some of my knowledge and passion. You got excited too. And I think it was a great partnership in the sense that I was able to communicate better the ideas that I wanted to evangelize around Workspace and how people can take advantage of it. And I think you were great at being able to draw that out of me in a way that people can understand and relate to.
Yeah, and not to mention translating for those who speak English.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Things can get a bit rough when I get overly passionate.
Yeah, and I've been around Rowan when he's engaged with other Scottish people, and he quickly goes from somewhat understandable to completely unidentifiable words coming out of there. So, yeah, and that spiraled. I guess not spiraled, but it moved towards
blossomed.
Yeah, blossomed into working with others at SADA that we have to like recognize. I think at this point, or I feel like I do because I don't get to work with them anymore. So Ken Jang, our producer, who early days was having a lot of fun with emojis in our videos and some of the more, I guess, goofy edits.
Fruity edits.
Yeah, fruity edits, as you would say. Yeah, exactly. But just a fun project that ended up turning into, really a passion of mine as well as yours, and something that, got me into this whole world of podcasting and producing content and sort of creating content for the workspace industry. And, that's now led into this show, which, I really just hope is a chance, a platform for other workspace professionals to come and share their stories of their career journey and talk about work transformation and the things that get us all excited, throughout the work week, but in a more relaxed environment so that we can just be ourselves and have a drink and really talk shop, sort of between colleagues and share and collaborate and grow the whole industry together.
Agreed. I think there's been a lot of lessons learned along the way for sure. It's been an interesting journey, and I think one of the principles that we tried to apply to the 27 Degrees project was to start simply but quickly iterate and adjust and pivot into what we thought would be successful. And it was great to sort of start building up some momentum on that whilst we were able to do it. But it's also equally excellent to be having a fresh conversation with you, and I'm certainly excited about what this year is going to hold in the realm of what I specialize in, productivity and collaboration. Maybe we should talk about some of the things that are that Google's up to, and maybe outside of Google also.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we'll cover on the show as regularly as possible is the plethora of updates that Google releases for the Workspace product line. And really, Rowan is a go-to resource for me and constant reminder to check the updates blog with your LinkedIn posts that are always so laden with value, really. So if you don't follow Rowan on LinkedIn, go check him out. He's always posting about the latest updates. Anything have your attention earlier in the year? I know there's been a few that have been long awaited that have come out finally in 2023.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been involved in a little project you may have noticed called 31 Days of Workspace, where I'm trying to post a video every single day that breaks down a helpful feature that Google's released, not just this year or recently necessarily, but just in Workspace, what I think would be most valuable to the most amount of people. I'm trying to do a little video there. So please, yeah, as Troy said, follow and see if you find it helpful. There's always, I think, a whole plethora of things to learn, because how can you keep up with all the updates? There's hundreds every single year. So yeah, very exciting. I think if I'm to call out one for the early part of the year, it has to be, of course, the very, very long anticipated and awaited emoji reactions in Meet. And my gosh, I've been enjoying that with my teammates at SADA. We, especially in the larger calls that we're having, it's an absolutely fantastic feature in terms of just bringing you into the call more and getting you engaged. And that's really been a challenge, I think, over the last few years is how do we keep engagement and interaction with a larger audience virtually? And I think that feature, as fun and simple as it might seem, is really, really fantastic at that.
Yeah, and a complete shift in a meeting benefit for the audience. Like from a live meeting, that's not an option. You can't exactly hold up a cue card with your reaction on it. I mean,
right.
You can certainly show your reaction physically, but the chance that everyone's going to get to gather that in a live meeting is unlikely. So this is great. It's producing data almost on how you're doing as a presenter or as a host of a large meeting. And it doesn't disrupt the flow. It's completely seamless. We've been using it at Strata Prime as well. It's something that we talked about in episode 1 of 27 Degrees all the way back in the spring of 2021. So, long awaited. And there's been a lot of updates that have come out for Meet. One that I read recently, this morning actually, was the ability to see presenter notes when presenting a slide deck in Meet. Thinking about how far Meet has come as a product from early in 2020 when the pandemic hit and Google went into overdrive in developing this product, it's pretty amazing the leaps and bounds that Google has made with Google Meet.
Yeah, absolutely. It just shows the way that they're able to accelerate their resources when needed and really meet customers' demands when they come. And they came thick and fast for sure during that period. And I think, Google really stepped up and they're only continuing that pace of development. I don't see any slowdown whatsoever, which is a very exciting time.
Yeah, it's great. And we know Serge Lachapelle, one of the original developers of that product at Google. And hopefully Serge is listening into this, and open invite to come on the podcast whenever you like, Serge. What other updates have got you excited this year? Or is there anything, from your 31 days that you're particularly keen on?
There's for sure lots of value there, and I think there's a couple of upcoming features. I'm really excited to see what Google announced in terms of their news for the year and what they see as what they see as things they're going to focus on. I think that AI integration could be a real area that we see a lot of development in. And I guess we can maybe touch upon some things outside of the Google ecosystem too. How can we not mention or talk about the technology of the moment, ChatGPT-3?
Yeah. Saw your post or shared post about the possible code red that was issued at Google Cloud with the advancement of ChatGPT. And it's a disruptor technology for sure. It's causing a huge ripple effect across the technology world in terms of how companies are developing their products moving forward. Google obviously is well positioned to take advantage of AI and a leader in AI. In fact, in terms of the large technology companies, how do you think this impacts the way that they develop Workspace moving forward, Ron?
Well, yes, certainly. I think it's very interesting indeed. Never before has a conversational piece of AI like that been generally available to the public in a way that they can actually digest and use. I think you'll see a rapid acceleration in Google's focus on AI and Workspace. And I was this is maybe a bit visionary and not something I've seen Google talk about, but something that I was explaining to you is maybe what I see as the vision potentially for where Workspace could get to. Whether it's by the end of the year or not, I'm not sure, but I see the idea of a productivity assistant being built into Workspace increasingly in different areas. I think we already see little sneak peeks of this in areas like auto-compose in Docs and, of course, Gmail, and other kind of suggestions, even little things like the conversation summaries in Spaces, where Google automatically can summarize a piece of conversation, which is at its infant stages, but will only develop. And I think this capability will grow and grow and become like that. The way I would like to think of it is if you had a personal assistant for all of your virtual productivity tasks. So something that can help write potential emails for you, schedule meetings, maybe even start the creation of documents. You see the amazing capabilities that ChatGPT is able to generate text in a way and in a tone of a particular person, I think Google also will build capabilities like that. So I think this idea of a general productivity assistant being built into Workspace is maybe a bit visionary, but something that the direction that Google might be headed in.
Yeah, it was interesting when we were chatting about this the other day. You know, you immediately went on the offensive with the use of ChatGPT. And of course, my position was the opposite. I was thinking about, okay, how do we detect AI created content, you know, from a defensive position as, you know, as a consumer of content on the internet? And how do we understand what's AI created and what's human created? And, you know, we're by no means experts on AI or ChatGPT. So if you have, you know, a comment or opinion on this, please share it with us in the comments. I'd love to hear more about how the market is shifting because of ChatGPT. But I've already seen, you know, new technologies emerging as standardized ways to detect AI created content and authenticate you know, the publication of that content and verify that it's human made. So I think we'll see a rapid evolution in technology in that front. And, you know, it would be great to have, you know, as you put it to me before, you know, instead of seeing your inbox filled with messages, your inbox is filled with potential replies to those messages already. That's a huge time saver, obviously, for most emails. Will it be well accepted? I don't know. I'm skeptical a little bit. I'm more of a technology skeptic than you are, I think.
I agree for sure, but imagine this, if I have to pitch it to the masses, imagine you can have an assistant to automate 90%, say, of your productivity tasks. Imagine the efficiency gains and how much more you can achieve, whatever your mission is in life or study or work. I think the power of that could be very incredible and compelling. But the future will tell.
Yeah, absolutely. What else should we chat about, man? This is our show. It's an open book.
I don't know.
I am curious if we've ever shared your story of coming over from Scotland, and maybe you could just share with the listeners a little bit about your background, those who don't know you, and just talk about what you're doing in your day-to-day role as well a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my passion for Workspace goes all the way back to where I come from as a person, which is Scotland. And in Scotland, when I was studying in university, I completed a consultancy project with a chap in Scotland called Colin Bryce, who was a very early stage Workspace evangelist and consultant. And through that, I worked for his business for 5 years and eventually evolved into the deployment lead for Workspace. And so I helped hundreds of organizations in Europe move to and also kind of make the most of the Workspace tools as they evolved through the years. And through that, developed a great passion for the impact that the tools can have. And because of that, I started posting on LinkedIn more and more. And through that, built a great network of connections and eventually a relationship with the SADA CEO, Tony Safoin. And then eventually that snowballed into me moving over to Canada in the middle of the pandemic to become a Workspace specialist for SADA, which as being the sort of one of the major players in North America at the time was very exciting for me. And I've continued to develop that career and really, I guess, sort of focus on my sales skills. Whilst I'm a product expert, it's a whole different sort of beast, unpacking what Workspace can do for an organization and introducing them to it. As you very much know, Troy, in the same role, actually convincing a company to really rethink what they're doing and look at Workspace can be a big project, an undertaking. So that takes a lot of skill from our side in order to deliver effectively. So that's kind of what I'm refining my skills doing now.
Yeah, it's a cool position to be in as a partner, because you really understand all of the moving pieces that go into that change. And it takes a lot of understanding of who you're speaking with in terms of IT leaders or decision makers at companies that are faced with, the question of which collaboration and productivity suite of tools they want to offer to their employees and their users in order to be the most efficient and collaborative. And I think, it is a big decision, and partners play a really important role in evaluating the product and making sure it's the right fit. And then, of course, drawing out the roadmap to that change and holding your hand all the way through it. I mean, we could talk about, our value all day probably, but it's a great position to be in. I'm really thankful for the job that we get to do every day now at different companies, but it's still super rewarding to be able to help folks take advantage of Google Workspace and get the most value out of it. I feel like a lot of even customers of Google Workspace, existing customers that have purchased their licensing direct through Google, they maybe started with a small team and thought, let's just grab these licenses and get going and put it on a credit card at some point. And as the licensing numbers grow, so does the complexity in that environment. And it's great to touch base with someone who really understands all of the control and compliance within Google Workspace to make sure that you're maintaining a secure environment. And that's where the partner ecosystem comes into play. It's a great place to be in.
Yeah, I completely agree. And with the amount of development that Google does, sure, you might have deployed Workspace a few years ago, and maybe at the time you were aware of all of the capabilities. You deployed it with some change management activities, perhaps, if you used a partner, which would have been helpful at the time. But I think there's a ton of value to be unlocked in ongoing engagement. And that's the whole idea, really, of Workspace, in the sense that it's not really a break-fix type of support model. It's more, we've implemented these tools, they work reliably and securely, so how do we make them work best for our people? And that's where the value of a partner can really come in. Yeah,
and I think it's valuable to say, there's a lot of partners out there available, and I encourage folks to find the right fit. Not all partners make sense for all customers, and I know our counterparts at Google know that, and they do their best to be matchmakers in that relationship and make sure that they're pairing the right customers with the right partners. But there's a ton of partners out there, a lot of great ones, and I think all customers of Google Workspace would benefit from having a partner relationship in some capacity, whether it's from a fully managed service provider to all the way to just an ad hoc statement of work by statement of work, project by project basis. There's definitely value there, and a lot of partners offer assessments around security and identity and access management and some of these basic key functions of Google Workspace. So if you're curious about that, reach out, and we'll definitely set you up with a partner that makes sense. Of course, this conversation is primarily focused on partners because that's what we both do. But in the future on Workspace After Work, I hope to have Workspace admins join me. I hope to have Googlers join me to give different perspectives from within the industry and really round out the story of who a Google Workspace professional is, because I think you and I have met a ton of interesting Googlers who are, come from all different backgrounds and walks of life, and in different corners of the globe. Even you've got colleagues in Scotland and the UK that you used to work with, and I think of Chantel Greco, who's I think in Switzerland.
Chanel Greco.
Chanel. Yes. Chanel. Forgive me, Chanel. But there are folks all over the world that are working in Google Workspace, and right. I'd love to chat with all of them at some point, so we can really tell the story.
Absolutely, and you know what? Just calling back to the feature we were talking about, the emoji reactions in Meet. One of the things which I don't think many people have considered, perhaps, or talked about, is that it's a feature which breaks the barrier of language completely. You don't need to speak the language to understand what a thumbs up means or what a hand raise is or a celebration. I mean, sure, there might be different cultures around the world that have different symbols that they use, but emojis are a generally sort of worldwide language-free way of communication. So I love the fact that you can use that worldwide without having to even learn the language. It's very clever in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, Workspace is definitely designed and developed with a global user base in mind,
Right.
and I mean that's seen in translations built into Meet for multiple languages and a growing list of languages. Seemingly by quarter, they're adding more and more languages into the functionality of translating live in Google Meet. So, it's as the workforce becomes more remote in some ways, and in some ways returning to office, and that's fine, but really global. If we think about how companies are now growing, they're not thinking about growing in their own backyard. They're all thinking with a global mindset, and Meet allows you to employ companies that speak different languages on the same team and have them work seamlessly almost. So, a huge value for companies growing in a global way.
Couldn't agree more. Shout out to the Meet team at Google.
Yeah, thanks so much for your hard work. We're keeping an eye on those updates regularly. Well, listen, man, want to keep these episodes to about 30 minutes or less. So I think we've done our job for the first one. I really appreciate you coming on. Rowan will be a recurring guest, I'm sure, on the Workspace After Work show. We're going to try and release episodes weekly, but I'm tentative to promise, a release schedule at this point. We are a launch and iterate model podcast, so things might be different by episode, and we're going to do our best to get as many out as we can over the next couple of weeks here, and hope you'll be back to listen to future episodes. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Roy. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Ron.